Hi, everybody, and welcome to Global Badass Goddess, where we aim to make a difference. And today I'm really excited, coming all the way from South Carolina. We have Sherie Carney. She was a Department of Justice victim witness coordinator. And I'm so delighted to actually meet a woman that has had such a powerful and an amazing career making a difference, even in times when women really, I mean, it's not like we're in the 1800s, but when women were challenged on many levels, not that we're not now, because we so are, but, but just, how you rose. I want to really hear your background first before we get into some questions and stuff. And I really want to know, like, what what was your passion around this? Where, how did you get started? Like, where did you, how did you fall into, a victim witness coordination program? Like, how did that happen? So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Glenda. I was very fortunate. I would love to tell you that I went after this job because I knew how big, how powerful, how wonderful it was going to be. But I answered a blind ad. Didn't say anything about working with victims of crime. I wasn't 5 minutes into the interview when it was like a spark had been lit underneath me. This was a nonprofit. I was going to be the first executive director of the nonprofit, and they had gotten a grant that supposedly would pay my salary. After I was hired and I went in and I read the grant, I realized that they had written a grant for $12,000 and they were paying me $16,000. And I had to come up with that $4,000 or I wasn't going to get paid for the rest of the year. So I went to the legislature, probably the best move I ever made in my entire life. We were able to get an $89,000 a year line item in the state budget to pay for SCVAN, South Carolina Victim Assistance Network. That is an organization that is thriving today, still working on all four cylinders, challenging what is wrong in the system and promoting what is right. So I was fortunate. I absolutely fell into that job, and the rest was history.
Wow. And how many years were you with that?
I was with the South Carolina Victim Assistance Network for 7 years. And then it came time uh, for me to turn my attention to something else. And a job had opened up at the South Carolina Attorney General's office to head up their victim witness program. So I interviewed and I was lucky enough to be hired for that job. Absolutely loved it. I was working in a new field in that it was the appellate division, where I must say I learned more about law than I had ever known in my entire life. I was working with death penalty families
Wow.
or families of murder victims because not all murders are end up with the death penalty. So, but primarily death penalty families, and it was a learn on the job. I read books, anything I could lay my hands on, was able to get into the intricacies that a death in the family puts a family through,
Yeah.
the number of marriages that do not survive,
Wow.
the number of surviving children that are left by the wayside and end up medicating with drugs or alcohol.
Wow.
It is not only devastating to lose a family member, but then to see your family disintegrate also.
Yeah.
So I was very fortunate to have that experience. During that particular experience, uh, victim services was brand new. It had been an unfunded mandate by Congress, which they are so good at doing, telling each state that they must do something, but there's no money to do it. So there was this unfunded mandate, and there was a victim advocate at the Department of Corrections where all of the executions took place. There was absolutely no guide path to what to do with victims
Yeah.
during that process. So she and I wrote a protocol
Wow.
for death penalty. And the gentleman who was head of the Department of Corrections at that time took our death penalty protocol national, and many states adopted that. What we tried to do was guide the victims through that particular process
Gotcha.
as easily as possible.
Gotcha.
The one caveat I really want to stress here, most victims thought the execution was going to be the end, and at the end, they were going to have closure. There is never any closure for a death penalty victim.
Wow.
It is always an open, gaping wound. Very, very sad.
That's
And so
interesting.
you needed to be there for them after the
Yeah.
execution, also.
So you're basically you're saying that you're there for not only the families of the executed one, but the families of people that are not complete with
Yeah.
that murder. Is that correct? That's
Absolutely.
so
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely.
Wow, that's so interesting, Sherie. And did you now you noticed that like when you first started working, did you start noticing like the whole death and dying process and how people just like aren't complete with that and you're starting to see the fallout? And that's when you guys put together the protocol?
We put together the protocol for that. But beyond that, I was on loan by the AG's office to any solicitor during a death penalty trial that wanted to have my services as a victim
Wow.
advocate. So I got to meet a lot of victims that way. I will tell you how long lasting it is. There are two victims that I am still in contact with
Mm,
that have been through the execution
mm.
and that still reach out. And somewhere the lines got very blurred between being their advocate and being their friend. And that happens when you realize there is no more you can do as an advocate, but you can be there to hold their hand during the rough times. You know, there's anniversaries every single year
Wow.
for those victims where there wasn't a death penalty. There are parole hearings after a period of time. Every
Right.
other year they have to go to. If they don't go and express their opposition to
Hmm.
parole, chances are the murderer will get paroled eventually.
Interesting.
So every other year, they re they absolutely go through the entire crime again.
Wow.
It it is just absolutely awful. I have seen men and women leave the room after giving their testimony
Yeah.
absolutely soaking wet from stress,
Mm,
anger,
yeah.
upset. It's a terrible burden we put on people
Yeah.
in this system.
That's not good. It's almost like they're reliving, like you just said, they're reliving that whole experience every year. It's like it doesn't allow people to get healed or to, you know what I'm saying, to live into something new. Oh my goodness, Sherie, I never thought of it.
Oh yeah, it haunts them till the day they die. It really does,
Wow.
and they have to keep moving. I'm sure you've heard of a lot of different foundations. A lot of crime victims' families have started foundations as a remembrance for the person in their family that was murdered.
Yeah.
And what happens is they are not living the life they lived
Mm,
before the murder. Frequently, friends are lost. You know, people have a very short time span. And there's nothing like saying to a victim, you know, it's been 3 months. Don't you think you ought to get over it? Get back out, start to play bridge again, go to church, do
mhm.
all of those things. Some people recover much more quickly than others, and
Yeah.
others never recover at all.
Wow. And of course, the way the system is set up, you're reliving it.
Absolutely.
Otherwise that the possibility of allowing them to go free is there. if they don't show up.
What is so much better, though, is that before 1986, when Congress mandated this unfunded mandate, uh, there was no victim representation ever in a courtroom. I don't know whether you or your listeners have ever thought of this, but cases were always Davis against the state,
Mm-hmm.
uh, Felix Ruckus against the United States of America. The victim in the case is always the state or the federal government. You never see an indictment come down that says uh, Diaz against Marlene Ekstrom.
Hmm.
You just don't see that. That's not the way our criminal justice system works. So prior to 1986, there was no representation at all for a victim in the court system.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now with some of the things that you've seen, have you is it mostly like it can be just any kind of crime, right? But it's crime against women, or is it a variety of things, or
It's a variety of things. We were very fortunate in getting the Violence Against Women Act, and that came approximately 10 years after the crime bill was ratified. The Violence Against Women Act covered sexual assault, domestic violence, and stalking. And there are a lot of independent shelters, both domestic violence
mm-hmm.
and sexual assault, uh, that are throughout the state, representing just about every county in the state. They have safe houses. They have places where a woman can come as a domestic violence victim, bring her children, but it takes, on the average, 5 attempts to leave the abuser
Wow.
before the woman ever leaves the abuser, if she does.
Wow.
And there's 2 ways to leave. One is with your children, going to a safe house. The other is in a body bag.
That's what I I knew that. Wow, that just now is that across the board as far as this
Yes.
go? Okay, so every state has that. Okay. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you participated in creating that, is that right?
I did. I was on the Violence Against Women Task Force that went to Washington. This was a bill that was introduced by Joe Biden when he was a senator. And I love to tell this story. My one big fame moment, I guess you'd call it. We had been told there were 12 of us writing the law. And we had been told that Joe Biden was expected to come by for lunch. It would be a working lunch, and he would come by to work with us on this. And of course, we all looked at the lady telling us and nodded our heads and looked at each other, going, that's never going to happen. Well, 10 minutes after 12, Joe Biden arrived with a box full of paper bag lunches, sat down, took off his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and stayed with us for 2.5 hours going over our questions, going over the language as it would be presented to Congress.
Wow.
One of the most exciting experiences I've ever had. It was such a proactive law. It has helped so many women. It's provided uh, the monetary background for these shelters to be able to move forward. It buys the sweatsuits that rape victims are given after their clothes are collected at a hospital.
Wow.
It's partly responsible for the rape shield law, which prevents a newspaper or a television station or the news of any kind identifying the rape victim. That is under the penalty of law, and the law is very specific and very severe. So rape victims are protected in that manner. And as I said, they are given a sweatsuit. It doesn't sound like much, but who would want to put the clothes back on? Plus, the clothes are being tested for DNA.
That's
They're
right.
also being gathered and put in sealed bags on the off chance that the offender is caught, and not many rape offenders are caught. But if
Interesting.
they are caught, uh, then all this evidence is there to present at trial.
Yeah, that's amazing. And there's so many layers to the psychology around, having that type of an offense, as a woman, they're, why don't you just speak up and say something? It's like, well, no, there's a lot of different factors. Like we're dealing with that right now with the trial with Diddy, you know, there's just so many layers there. Well, why don't you just leave? She was with him for 10 years. And it's like, well, yeah, you don't understand the psychology, especially those
Yeah,
type of people, they bring you in, they seduce you, they make you, they love you, make you love them, and then it's slowly over time, there's these little things that happen and you want out, but you don't know how. Or next thing you know, like we saw that video of her being beaten horribly in a hallway, so things like that you can't. I know a lot of times people just don't understand how that happens, or like you said, they're going to end up in a body bag if they keep staying, you know and that's what happens
absolutely.
sometimes. Yeah.
Uh, it's interesting that you brought up this particular case
Yeah.
because they have aired her texts back and forth with Diddy,
Mm.
and she professes her love,
Mm-hmm.
her appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he did build her career,
Mm-hmm.
and that this was the price he exacted for doing that, but he did build her career.
Yeah.
And she was excoriated
Yeah.
on the witness stand, absolutely excoriated.
Wow.
So it's sad. We will see who the public believes when all
Right.
is said and done, because she is the star witness in that case.
Yeah.
But most rape victims, very few go on to lead productive lives with husbands and children
Yeah.
and just the normalcy of
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
It's and just say no sounds good as
Yeah.
a soundbite, but it's pretty meaningless if someone is going to rape you.
That's right. And you and you're in different, it's different situations too, different stages of life, different psychological issues that people have, like maybe your self-esteem is extremely low, or you're very young, like Jufree, she just killed herself, supposedly, or not allegedly, things like that, and it it's not one size fits all, but grateful that we have something in place for that, because before, especially if you're, maybe even you're a prostitute, you don't even come forth, you know so amazing. Well, thank you so much for being a part of that. I think that's fascinating.
It
And
was
then,
my pleasure.
yeah, and how do you personally handle that loss and the grief with the victims? How do you handle that for yourself?
I learned very early on. I made some dreadful mistakes. I gave out my phone number to every victim
Oh,
uh, that whose case I was working on,
yeah,
which was a terrible mistake, uh, because you do need time to unwind.
yeah.
And my degree is in psychology and in
Mm,
art, and I'm a painter.
mm,
And set up a studio in my home, and I would paint. And to tie it back into the network that I was the chair of, I would sell the paintings at silent auctions
ah,
every year, and that would go towards budgetary concerns.
yeah.
So it gave me an outlet, gave me some downtime, gave me some alone time, and on top of that, I had a husband who loved being Mr. Sherie Carney when it came to my profession, and bent over backwards to do everything he possibly could. He started sponsoring at our very first Victim Rights Week. He sponsored a suite that we set up with food and soft drinks so that people would have a place to go after the seminars, after the training, and it wouldn't cost them anything to eat.
Yeah.
So that's what he did for me to help
That's
me in my profession, and I'll be forever grateful for having someone that had
yes.
that kind of commitment to it.
Yeah. And commitment to you and just what can happen when you're with somebody that loves you and how it feels to thrive. You just allow your being allowed in the space of friendships, loves, deep relationships. And it does affect us, if your partner or husband or whatever is not supporting what you do, it makes it quite challenging. And so that's amazing. What a beautiful story on that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
would have
it really
loved to
was.
have met him.
If I could tell you something with a little bit of levity,
Yes,
because I think we need levity with this kind of
yes,
subject.
yes.
We lived in a neighborhood where everybody knew what I did, uh, because my name was in the paper for a number of different things, different reasons. So my neighbors knew who I was. And there's something called the sex registry. And men and women who have committed sexual crimes against children are on that sex registry. And unbeknownst to me, a man moved into our neighborhood on that registry. And Alan was home. He was retired. He was home, and the doorbell rang, and a woman was at the door. And she said, "What is your wife going to do about this?" And he said, "About what?" She said, "We've got a predator, and he bought a house over by the pool. What is she going to do?" And Alan said, "Well, that's really not in her purview." And then the doorbell started ringing over and over and over again. And he finally turned out the lights so no one would know he was there. And he picked up the phone and he called me. This is the state he was in at this time. He said, "What are you going to do about this man that's living in our neighborhood?" And I said, "Whoa, back up.
What?
Wait a minute. That's not my job, but I will make sure it goes to the right person."
Right.
But even he got so caught up in how
Yeah.
people were feeling about that.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
infectious. Well,
And
fear
it's
is
another,
makes people crazy. So, yeah.
right. But that's another service that is provided that didn't exist before 1986.
Okay. Wow. I didn't. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Very interesting. Huh.
It doesn't act as a deterrent,
Mm,
but it acts as a warning if you are in an area where the
mm.
person makes their home.
Yeah. And isn't there, and there, I think there's laws to say that if you're uh, a predator of some sort, you can't live near a school. It depends on, right? Yeah. I think that happened with,
You're absolutely
yeah.
right.
Yeah. Really interesting. Um, so, yeah, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to share that story, but there's a story of kind of on the opposite side, which I think is maybe I should share that a little bit. Um, so I know somebody that at a really young age went to jail for I don't know if what I can say predatory acts. I don't know I don't know what they've got all these rules now, what you can say and not say.
Right.
Anyway, a PDA, yeah, what they call PDF or something like that. Anyway, um,
Yeah.
and um, he was a young man, and and of course he went through the system, the justice system, and worked on himself in the actual the system itself, and he got out and stuff. But it was interesting because I was talking with him and he was sharing it's not a sex act, it's a violence, it's about violence and frustration. And he was when he was a kid, and he didn't, lost his dad and all these other things were happening. And not that he acts like a victim, because he's not, but I noticed though, I had come over to his house and I said, "Hey, let's go for a run," because I was running a lot at that point. And so so I said, I'll just, hit the neighborhood. You want to go with me? And he's like, it's like, no, let's just go down to the park. I'm like, no, I just want to go to the neighborhood. I want to get in the car, drive somewhere, and then do a run, right? And so, but I found out, I said, why? Why won't you run your neighborhood? He said, because I don't want my neighbors to think that I'm casing their house to do PDFs. And he hadn't done that like since he was a kid. He's in his 50s,
Yeah.
right? But it stuck with him. That fear stuck with him, and he loves his neighbors, and he lives in a really nice community and everything. And it wasn't child anything, but he was a child when that went down. But I just thought that was really interesting from um a victim standpoint, with a predator. Why? I mean, each person is different, right? Each situation is different. And I think laws are important to have, and at the same time I think it's important to also have some advocate on your side saying, yes, we need to talk through this, or yes, this is this situation, let's discuss that. It's not just blanketed.
You would think that that is true, but if you think about the symbol for justice,
Mm,
it is a woman holding the scales of balance,
yes,
blindfolded.
yes,
Justice is blind.
yes.
And if you unfortunately are on the end of being a predator in your very, very early years,
Mm,
it will be difficult to lose
yeah,
that that past reputation.
yes, yeah.
That's because justice is blind.
That's right. Very interesting. And I noticed with him, it wasn't the people that were that way with him, it was how he felt about himself.
Exactly.
Wow, that was like, you don't need to go to prison. He's already in a prison in with freedom. So that was interesting. I thought that was quite poignant moment, because where I take for granted, I like, let's just go, let's run down the street. He's like going, no, that's okay. I'm like, why? What's wrong with you? It's like, oh, you're in prison. You never left prison.
That's
And
right.
it's very sad on that level.
It is.
But yeah, as you know, Sherie, you've been through a lot. There's so much um, to adjust, to see, and it just makes it harder when we're going through the nonsense that we're going through, um, you know, with a variety of things. I don't want to get into it, but um, I'm just really glad that you wanted to share your moments in time with really making a difference and inspiring people to, take that act. You step forward. What can I do? And what would be some of the things that you would share with other women, how they can empower themselves to actually step forward and do something? What would you say to that?
Well, volunteering, there is not a victim agency that does not need more volunteers. You can volunteer for any number of things. If you don't want to go to the shelter and be exposed to the children and the women that are living there,
Yeah.
you can go and collect blankets. You can run a bake sale. You can do any number of things because every small act, there is a reward at the end of it. But the one thing I did want to point out is this started as a woman's field,
Mm,
probably because it was so poorly paid. But then salaries started to increase, and we have had a handful of wonderful men join the profession
mm.
over the years. But we have law enforcement presence. We have what's called the LEVAs, the law enforcement victim advocates.
Okay.
We have the solicitor, which is a DA out in California, but it's a solicitor here in South Carolina. They have victim advocates. They have all levels, and it does still tend to attract women. So I would say if you are a woman and you are looking to get into this type of activity, think seriously about getting a degree in criminal justice,
Hmm.
and then be willing to put yourself out there and try to become a victim advocate with one of the many resources that there would be available in your community.
That's amazing. So, in order to do that, would you just start by looking things up online maybe and to jump in and donate your time and because you can.
I would say the best way
Mhm.
to accomplish this would be to find an agency and offer to volunteer
Okay.
and see if this works for you.
Okay. Yeah.
Working with sexual assault victims is very different than working with domestic violence victims.
Okay.
Extremely. There's a great deal of sympathy for a sexual assault victim. And we need people with some training who are willing to go to the hospital and sit for the 9, 10, 11 hours the victim sits there before her rape kit is completed, her clothes are gathered, the police have done their interviews.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's for one type of person. There is another type of person out there that would really do well in the domestic violence. Maybe they were raised in an atmosphere where there was domestic violence, so they have a lot of ethos for those victims.
Gotcha.
So I would say before, while you're still in high school, find a place for yourself, something you can
Mhm.
do.
Mhm.
Everybody is so busy digitizing right now.
Mhm.
And our young people are the ones that have those skills much more than we older people.
That's
So I
right.
would say that's another place you can lend your
Expertise.
talents,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
then decide to go into criminal justice. By then, you should have been to enough victim situations, I'm going to call them, that your name should be known among the personnel. And there might be a sheriff or a police chief, a SLED director, domestic violence coordinator. There's somebody out there that would be very interested in taking you into their program.
Great.
So it's a wonderful field to get in.
What type of person or personality would you say that would be right for this type of situation?
The first thing is you cannot be judgmental. And we all know looking inward who we really are, not the facade we put forth to the world, but who we really are.
Yes.
It takes a totally non judgmental person. The last thing a domestic violence victim wants to hear is, for the love of God, why didn't you just leave?
Totally.
Or, or this is just ridiculous. Why would you expose your children to that?
Right.
Well, if she had been able to leave, if she had a bank account with money, if she had keys to the car, she would have left.
Sure.
And so you have to have a very empathetic personality.
Mhm.
You also have to be wise enough to be able to separate. I had a friend who was a victim advocate, and she was a sailor. And she used to, after work in the summer, go take her sailboat out on Lake Murray and thoroughly enjoy sailing. And that was her escape. She'd get home about 9:30 at night and be so tired she'd take a shower and fall into bed. But we all needed our escape. We all needed to do
Yeah.
something. So, empathetic, non judgmental, someone who doesn't watch a clock. The hospital is not going to get to a rape victim on your time schedule, and you can't turn to her and say, well, it's 5 p.m. and I get off and I have to leave. There
Right.
is no such thing. It can be very long days, very long days, but they bring a great deal of satisfaction, and you
Yeah.
know that you have helped someone. You really know that you have helped someone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have to really have a desire to serve and really be giving. and have that time and space. So, yeah, I just
It
believe that.
also makes you very, very aware of your own surroundings.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can't even begin to tell you. I was a victim advocate. I was downtown in Columbia for a reason. This is a number of years ago. And a young man approached me and tried to get my purse.
Mm,
And I was wearing a crossbody, so it was across
mm-hmm.
my body. And I leaned back against the car and I pulled my heeled foot up as far as I could. And I kicked out and I put him to his knees, which
Nice.
gave me enough time to finish unlocking my car and getting in.
Wow.
Uh, Unfortunately, we didn't have cell phones at the time, so I couldn't make an instantaneous call. This garage, that is a very big garage in Columbia, had no cameras.
Oh,
So there was
goodness.
only thing we had was that I saw him on a plaid flannel shirt. That was the only thing I could remember about him, plaid flannel. And he was never caught. But I am always aware of my surroundings and so grateful. Gosh, I am so grateful for things like our automobiles that unlock from afar,
Yes.
all the safety things that we have going for us, the flashlights that you can carry on a key ring,
Yep. Whistles.
the
Mm-hmm.
bear spray.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, all these things are very, very just so easy to access,
Yeah.
and and they provide for our safety. And then for all of your listeners out there, I have my sister came up with the best trick I ever thought of. Now I no longer have a gun in the house, and so Candace said, "Well, if anyone breaks into the house, we'll get them with wasp spray." So we each keep a can of wasp spray
It's a great
beside
idea.
our bed,
Yeah.
and you could put someone to their knees by hitting them in the eyes with the wasp
Ouch.
spray. So it's
Yeah.
a wonderful safety.
Wow. What a great. Wow. I never thought about that. Thanks, Candace.
Isn't that it's a wonderful,
Wow.
wonderful solutions.
Yeah. Wasp spray. Great idea.
And
Ooh,
it shoots out 20 feet.
does it? Wow.
Yeah,
Oh my
you're
goodness.
gonna get somebody.
Wow. Oof. Wow. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I have another question for you. You know, I was sitting here wondering, do you miss doing that service for victims? Do you miss being there?
I retired in 2008, and I retired for a very, very good reason. I wasn't tired of the job, but we had so many young women coming up in the state that had new and wonderful ideas that were far more tech savvy than I was. And this is when we were really becoming computerized for notifications, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I felt as though I had given the best I had to give,
Yeah.
and that it was time to let these younger women come up and start to do the job and come up with their own ideas. So, no, I don't regret it. If I did regret it, I could be volunteering.
Yeah.
I have chosen not to volunteer in that field anymore because we have enough younger women that are
Yes.
truly engaging with this profession.
Yes. Well, that is so you, Sherie. You are a gorgeous woman inside and out. You're elegant. You know how to hold your power, empowerment. You are a badass goddess, I'm going to say, just like your sister, Candace. And we just have the gratitude is so huge to know your journey, your path. There's so much more to you, and grateful that you stepped forward and really got into action and said, no, I'm going to do this. And you've helped so many people, and most of us will never know it unless we're in the courts. but I definitely really appreciate you for taking the time. And Yeah, if you have any last tidbits of insights or inspiration for everyone, how would you want to say that to them?
If you are a victim of crime, and first I'd like to say to you, always be cognizant so you can try to prevent a crime from happening. But if you, as a listener, end up being a victim of crime and a victim advocate has not contacted you within 48 hours of the crime, be proactive, pick up the phone, call the sheriff's department, the police department, whoever it may be, and say, I am a victim. The report was taken 2 days ago, and I need to speak with your victim advocate. That's what you have to do. Be proactive. Be proactive in your life in every single solitary way, but particularly if you're hurting.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and I love you dearly. And we'll see you next time on Be a Badass Goddess.
Uh,